Our aim should be to establish all sentient beings whose numbers are as innumerable as space is vast in the state of omniscient, fully awakened Buddhahood. All of these beings who at one time or other have invariably been our loving and kind mothers. In order to bring about this goal, in order to make this a reality, we should set out with this motivation at heart to listen to the instructions on the profound path of the JOOL Ornament of Liberation as it has been taught by the incomparable master Gampopa, or Rinpoche as he is known. So if we were to make such a motivation our own, if we were to give rise to this wish from the bottom of our hearts, this would be what we call the enlightened attitude, or the attitude of Bodhicitta, the attitude of Bodhisattvas. Therefore, with this attitude at heart, with this intention or motivation, we should now listen to the instructions which follow.
Finish. I have marked here. This book is mine. Even I have it dated here, 2005. So from among these 6 chapters of Gampopa's JOOL Ornament of Liberation, we have already received instructions on the first 3, namely the potential, which is the Buddha nature, which is present within all of us, the chapter about the working basis, which is that of the precious human body, and the chapter on the condition which has to be met, which is that of the spiritual teacher, or the Lama, who gives us this instruction. The chapters which still remain are 4, 5, and 6, which deal with the skillful means, the teachings and liberating instructions as we receive them from the Lama.
than the Buddhahood that is achieved through the practice of these and spontaneous Buddha activity. Now, given the fact that the present chapter, the fourth, which deals with the skillful means, with the teachings and instructions which are to be requested by the teacher, which are to be put into practice by the student, given the fact that this is the largest chapter of the whole book, which goes on for many, many pages, containing many points, Rinpoche says, going at the pace at which we're going from year to year, it would take a very long time to continue this. And this in itself may be difficult, because there are people coming who join the courses who will not come the next year. There are other people who have not been here the previous year. So people would possibly never get the whole instruction in one go. Also, given the fact that Rinpoche, as it presently looks, will very likely not be able to join us here next year, as he has commitments in the monastery in Tibet, there could even obstacles arise for the practice of each and individual one of us if there were such a break in these teachings. Therefore, Rinpoche has decided to change the course of these teachings somehow, and to use the time while all of us are here together right now to give a summary of that which is contained in the next 3 chapters, to teach all 3 chapters in such an essential way that we will get a good idea what is still ahead, and in such a way that we are also able to apply these instructions in our daily practice. So one might ask oneself, what else is there to be said? We have heard about the potential, about the working basis, and about the condition, and we are in the clear about these facts. We all know that we have this Buddha potential, the potential for the achievement of full awakening and liberation of Buddhahood, which is known as Buddha nature. We all are endowed with this potential. All of us, as we are presently assembled here, have achieved what we call the precious human body, and all of us have met a qualified, authentic teacher. So what else is there to be done? Now, simply having brought these 3 conditions together, that in itself is not yet enough, by far not. Just having that Buddha potential and having a precious human body and having met a teacher, that in itself will not yet lead to liberation. Once we have brought these 3 conditions together, we have to make the best possible use of them. Once we have met a teacher, we do have to request instructions from a teacher. Simply having met the teacher in itself will not yet help us very much. Therefore, we have to request instructions from the teacher, we have to receive them, listen to them, reflect upon them, and familiarize ourselves with their contents by way of putting them into practice, by way of training. If we were not to do so, well, then just nothing whatsoever would be happening. Simply having met a teacher and having not requested and then put into practice the instructions does not lead to liberation, does not lead to Buddhahood. None of the Buddhas of the past has ever managed to achieve Buddhahood in such a way, and it's very likely that none in the future will either. Now, in order to convince us further why the present conditions that we have brought together are not yet enough, it may serve us to hear about the 4 obstacles which there are. The 4 obstacles under the influence of which we find each other to various degrees. The first obstacle or hindrance is that we cling to the pleasures of this life. The second obstacle is that we have hopes for pleasures in possible future lives. The third obstacle is that the third obstacle is that we hope to be able to achieve peace and happiness for our own sakes. And the fourth obstacle is that we have no idea whatsoever how to bring about such happiness and such peace. We are ignorant about that which leads to liberation. So, since we find ourselves under the influence of these 4 hindrances or obstacles, therefore, simply having brought together these 3 conditions of which we have heard is not in itself not enough.
남신 주베 균시데 바 세월 세발라 오나티 설지게 당마디 망고요레다 뉴요레다 무스나 이 망용티 주드나 동아 시여 송하레 대아티 동들라 부요레 메다 공당 코로이 이미 렌데 제바 당 잠나 민지 공바당 장수지에 최남때 대다 넘버 시에 디 당마 당시 두
So, since we indeed find ourselves under the influence of these 4 obstacles or hindrances, this is exactly the reason that we are still caught up within this cycle of existence. This is exactly the reason why we have not yet achieved the omniscience of full enlightenment, of full Buddhahood. To reiterate them, we cling to our sense pleasures, we have hopes to experience similar such sense pleasures in possible future lives. We still hope that we might in some way or other achieve peace and happiness for ourselves. And we are ignorant about the means of how to bring about complete awakening or Buddhahood or realization. Now, if we were to request instructions from our teachers, then what would these instructions be? Would there be would our teacher have, our spiritual friends, would they have many different instructions, or would there be just a few of them? Indeed, this depends very much on the situation, but if one were to summarize all of these are being brought together, or these are being expressed in a verse which we find in the chapter here of our text. And the antidotes which our teacher could give us in order to counteract these hindrances. To that end, it is being said to contemplate impermanence, to contemplate the impermanence of everything within samsara, for one, to contemplate the shortcomings of everything that is experienced within this cycle, being the second, to contemplate loving kindness and compassion, and to bring about the attitude to strive for the sake of all others, of all other beings. These are the antidotes to these 4 kinds of hindrances or obstacles under the influence of which we find ourselves. So if we were to summarize all the different kinds of instructions which we could possibly receive from our spiritual friends, that would be the essence of what we could possibly hear.
당보 미닥과 공부하다 때문에 가르팽기를 선디 대화의 차원, 선디 주의 차원 뒤도토고요. 때문에 rim바니바디 코로이님이 레담 제고도 제베 남자한테서 내가를 삼나 뒤 가르팽기요. 때문에 시베 대화의 차원 뒤도토고요. 때문에 잠단인지 니 곰나 가르팽기요. 니랑기 시와 초지가 있는데 이 시와 때마다 차고 있는 주도요. 근데 장수초도 셈제나 이 방자리 상지들의 타로 몸방 탑 친지 먹는 주와 대도의 임주도.
So how do these 4 antidotes manage to conquer the four hindrances or the 4 obstacles? If we were to contemplate the impermanent, the imperishable nature of everything that exists within samsara, of all the sense pleasures, possessions, and so forth that we could possibly cling to, then that indeed would become an antidote against such clinging. If we were to reflect about their permanent nature, how they have no substance, and how they very likely will be snatched away from us under whatever conditions at some time or other. This would be the first antidote against this would be the antidote against the first obstacle. If we were to reflect upon the shortcomings of samsara, the shortcomings of any possible existence within samsara, all the problems and sufferings that are being entailed therein, that are being included therein, this would become a direct antidote against our having any hopes for finding pleasant conditions within samsara, either in this life or in future lives. If we were to contemplate loving kindness and compassion, if we were to familiarize ourselves with these, this would become the antidote for our harboring any hopes of finding peace and happiness solely for ourselves. And if we were to contemplate that which is called the enlightened attitude, Bodhicitta, the attitude of a bodhisattva, of someone who strives for the benefit of others, this would be the direct antidote against our being ignorant of the means which bring about awakening or liberation. So in this way, these 4 contemplations, these 4 points, considering them thoroughly, contemplating them, become the antidotes against the 4 obstacles or hindrances under the influence of which we presently find ourselves. Now, to contemplate the impermanent nature of everything that appears and exists, of all phenomena and appearances, everything that we could possibly cling to, is a direct antidote against our clinging to these. This is a fundamental point, an extremely important point, and we find mention of this already as early as in the words of the Buddha himself. The Buddha himself at various occasions has said to his students, to his monks and followers, all compounded phenomena are subject to impermanence. This means that whatever has come together under the influence of circumstances and conditions is subject to impermanence, has no permanent nature whatsoever, will sooner or later fall apart in any which way whatsoever. Now, the Buddha has taught this many times to many different assemblies of students, and this holds true for each and every one of those who follow the path of the Buddha, no matter which tradition one follows, whether one is a follower of the lesser vehicle, the Hinayana, or of the greater vehicle, the Mahayana. This basic recognition of all compounded phenomena being subject to impermanence is the common ground for all of those who set out to follow either the one tradition or the other tradition of the teachings of the Buddha. It is so basic that one finds it in a great many different teachings, and such instructions or teachings as are being characteristically those of the Buddha will invariably include this point. This is one of the 4 fundamental points that the Buddha has taught, namely that all compounded phenomena are impermanent, that all erroneous activity or actions or deeds will lead to suffering, and then when it comes to the 3rd point, there is a slight difference between whether it is being taught to Hinayana, adherents of the Hinayana or the Mahayana tradition. The 3rd point then says that all phenomena and appearances are free of any inherent existence, whereas it is being added for those of the for those practitioners or followers of the Mahayana path, where then the sentence or the point, the statement is added that they are empty by themselves and out of themselves. So this is the 3rd point, either according to the Hinayana or the Mahayana tradition. And now I also forgot the 4th point. Oh yeah, and the 4th point is that only true nirvana, having gone beyond suffering, is true peace. So these are the 4 fundamental tenets that the Buddha has put forth, and it bases itself always on the very first point which we're talking about now, namely the fact that everything that could be characterized as a compounded phenomena is indeed subject to impermanence. Simply thinking of impermanence, simply repeating to oneself, everything is impermanent, nothing will last, that in itself does not bring about an understanding, let alone an experience of impermanence within ourselves. We truly, thoroughly have to familiarize ourselves with this fact. Now, when we talk about impermanence, there is a great many different ways in which such impermanence can manifest itself to ourselves. There are rather coarse ways, rather very obvious ways in which impermanence manifests, and there are rather subtle ways. Now, it goes without saying that initially, as we start out familiarizing ourselves with these ideas, that we can not or will not necessarily see and understand the subtle kinds, the subtle ways in which impermanence can manifest itself. Therefore, it would serve us well to first start out by way of familiarizing ourselves with the coarse ways in which impermanence manifests. If we were to do so, we would have to consider all of that which we perceive, all of that which we have experienced in our lives. We can liken these ideas of impermanence to, we can apply this idea of impermanence to just about everything. Now, if we were to summarize these different kinds of impermanence and the ways in which impermanence manifests itself, one could do so by way of the so-called 4 endings. And these 4 points, which describe the various kinds by which, through which impermanence can manifest itself, they give us a pretty good idea about how all of this impermanence works. In there, it is said that all accumulation will finally result or end in exhaustion. That means to say, whatever it is that we might accumulate, whatever it is that we might bring together, that we might hoard, this does not guarantee that whatever stash it is that we have been accumulating will stay with us forever. Eventually it will be consumed, eventually it will be exhausted, and there will be nothing left. So whatever we could bring together, whatever we could collect, whatever we could accumulate in such a way, will eventually be exhausted again, will be consumed. The second kind of ending is, or the second kind of ending says that the end of all kind of, well, yet again, accumulation or construction is decline. We can see this very clearly, for instance, by way of all the different kinds of buildings, if we were to take this as an example. Initially, we construct a building, we lay brick upon brick until we have got a very magnificent mansion together, but eventually it will be destroyed. Eventually it will collapse upon itself, it will decline. So no matter how magnificent a mansion we could be building, it will not last forever. The third of the 4 kinds of endings says that the end of all coming together, one could say, the end of all meeting is parting. So whenever a group of people comes together, that does not mean that this, once this status quo has been achieved, that things will forever remain like this. People come together under a certain setting, under certain circumstances, and once these have been consumed, they will part again. So no matter under what conditions 2 people or a great number of people come together, eventually the reason, the condition for coming together will be exhausted again and they will part. And then finally there's the 4th ending, which is probably the most familiar one to each and every one of us, which says that all birth ends in death. So basically, from the moment we're born, we're already heading towards our death. Nothing that has ever been born has lasted forever, has not died. We might have such an idea, or we might hope that this could possibly one day happen, but it simply doesn't, and it never has. It never has in the past. Everything that is being born under the conditions of whatever will eventually die. So in this way, considering these 4 kinds of endings, we can familiarize ourselves with and understand the idea of impermanence. Now, having heard a few words about impermanence now, how does Gampopa, in his JOOL Ornament of Liberation present these. In this particular chapter, and the sub-chapter rather on impermanence, he brings this together under three headings or three subcategories. And he says under these 3 points, everything that needs to be known about impermanence is explained. The 3 points are the categories of impermanence there are, the different ways in which impermanence could possibly manifest itself. The second point is the means of familiarizing ourselves with these particular categories, understanding them, appreciating them. And the third point is the benefit that we derive of our familiarizing ourselves with these categories. So under these 3 headings, Gampopa explains everything about impermanence that we could possibly need to know. So as Gampopa then continues to explain these 3 points, he starts out with explaining the different categories of impermanence itself. And as he begins with this, he says there are 2 major subcategories of impermanence. There's the one kind of impermanence, which pertains to the outer world, to our surroundings, to that which we perceive as the outer world. And there's the impermanence which pertains to the beings that live within this world. Explaining the types of the different kinds of impermanence as pertaining to the world and all the phenomena and appearances that appear within this world, he says there is on the one hand coarse impermanence, and on the other hand there is also the manifestation of subtle impermanence. Explaining impermanence in terms of the beings that live within this world, he says there is impermanence as pertaining to others, and then there's impermanence pertaining as to oneself. So if we were to just look at others and realize that these others do not live forever, but that they eventually die, we would then eventually understand that such impermanence also pertains to ourselves, realizing that others are born and do indeed die. The idea might be born or realized within ourselves that at one time or other we ourselves would have to suffer the same fate. As Gampopa then continues to explain about impermanence, he first explains about what we call coarse impermanence, meaning the impermanence of the world, that which we perceive as the world, and everything it is being made out of. And he quotes here from, or he uses a word that has been spoken by the Buddha himself, which can be found in the teachings on Abhidharma, in which the Buddha has explained how the world from its very base up to its highest summit, how it is being made up, what are the elements of this world. And there he explains that first at the very base there is the mandala of wind or movement, on top of that is the mandala of fire, on top of that is the mandala of water, on top of that the mandala of earth, and so on. There's a long list of components of which this world is being made up of, up until the pinnacle, the highest summit of this world, which are the so-called 4 meditative states, the 4 dhyana states, which are states of meditative absorption of highly realized beings. Now, all of this is continuously, again and again, being destroyed. All of this comes to an end within certain periods of time. It's a cyclic reoccurrence of such destruction. Occasionally, within such cycles, it happens that the entire world is being destroyed by fire. If that is the case, everything up to the first meditative state or dhyana state is being destroyed. Then, during other cycles of impermanence, of destruction, the world is being destroyed by water or by wind. Again, always up to a particular one of these highest states of meditative absorption, which are likened to these elements. And this way, as a cyclic reoccurrence, even though this world seems so permanent and so real, it is being destroyed again and again. It is just the highest beings of the 4th and highest meditative state which are not being influenced by this in any way whatsoever. However, also they have no permanent dwelling. Also they, once the circumstances that have led to their being born in such a state are being exhausted, also they leave that particular kind of existence and move on to another plane. So in this way, even if these are impermanent, even if these are being destroyed under such and such conditions and circumstances every now and again, then no need to mention any possible other states. So in this way, the Buddha in the Abhidharma, and this is then being quoted by Gampopa, in this way, coarse impermanence, the impermanence of the outer world and all its elements is being explained. So now moving on to the second type of impermanence, which is subtle impermanence. We can familiarize ourselves with this by way of simply watching how the seasons change within the course of a single year. In summer, it is usually warm, except maybe if you come here. In winter, it is usually cold, and in spring and autumn, you have some kind of in-between situation. Usually in autumn it is not quite as hot as in summer anymore, but it's not quite as cold as in winter yet, and usually in spring it is not quite as cold as in winter anymore, but not yet quite as hot as it ought to be in summer. So in this way, things permanently change in the course of seasons. This would be the one way, the coarse way of familiarizing ourselves with subtle impermanence. The second type of familiarizing oneself with it is to watch the course of day and night. In the morning when the sun rises and enlightens the scenery around ourselves. Everything seems clear and brilliant. Everything can be clearly perceived. And then slowly, as the day wears into the afternoon, into early and late evening, it's getting darker and darker. Things are becoming more and more diffuse until night has arrived. So in this way, this also continuously changes. There is not a single moment which is permanent in any way whatsoever. And this brings us to the most subtle type of impermanence, which is that of each and every instant. We know theoretically, intellectually, that whatever it is that we perceive, whatever it is that we see, hold in our hands, that we could possibly think of, that all of these objects, these appearances, phenomena, that they do indeed constantly change, that from one moment to the other, they're just not the same anymore. However, the change that they undergo is of such a subtle nature that we do not necessarily see it with our eyes, that we do not necessarily perceive this with our sense organs. However, we are familiar with the fact that this simply is so. An example that may serve to interpret this is, for instance, if we were to come to the shore of a river, we could think like, oh, this is the very same river I have stood at last year. To say so would be utter nonsense, because even from one moment to the other, the waters of the river are continuously moving on. Not even from one moment to the other is the river ever the same. So how could it possibly be the very same river a year on? It just doesn't work this way. So in this way, what we cling to, what we hold to be permanent, is a certain continuity that we seem to perceive, which, if one really looks at it, is not really there. We have this idea of a continuity of things remaining as they are, as we like them to remain, but if one looks at it very closely, we will very clearly see that this is not so. So impermanence taking its toll on us right now. This brings us to the end of this session. So if there are any questions, please keep them to tomorrow, because now there are stomachs to be filled.